Jose, thanks very much for joining the podcast. Man, this is episode one, and so you are guest number one, and so excited about having you
Woo,
on.
I'm the number one. Nobody else could be number one.
That's right. So we're an owners club together, and so tell us a little bit about your background.
Oh, that's a very loaded question, kind of. Um, so I am a retired Air Force veteran of 22 years. I am a husband of 24 years, and I am a father of four. I've basically been in the IT field, working of course, as a military member, and then now as a contractor. Going on, let's say 27 years that I've been in the IT field. So, what that includes is while I was in the military, I was responsible for almost every single type of form of communication you can think of, whether it be creating a network so people can check their email and surf the web, do a video conference call, which is kind of interesting because I set that one up before in the middle of a field. So you can make calls from anywhere if you have the right tools. Um, Making satellite shots for connections for networks and communication. Um, Now I'm a system administrator, so I focus on basically helping developers have the tools and make sure their systems work so that they're able to write the code they need for the task at hand. And then, yeah, outside of being an IT guy, as you and I got a chance to meet each other, I an investor. I have my own business investing in real estate. I started actively. I think my career started back when I was 19, 20 years old. To show how old I am, it was back in my first one of my first jobs was a savings and loan, and they they put me into the mortgage department to do a loan processing. And then fast forward to 2008, I started purchasing some guru education, teach me how to invest. Went through probably, let's see, 4 or 5 different programs before I ran into um, Pace Morby and Jamil on Sub 2 and Astro. And so from 2008, I got actively invested in 2016. I started off doing wholesaling like most investors and um, did 2 or 3. It's kind of tough because I didn't know how to do the paperwork right. I didn't know how to follow up with the title company. I mean, like all the stuff that I know like the back of my hand now, right? Because I have better education than I did back then. And then moved on to, let's see, I tried my first flip where I learned or received my first expensive webinar. Lost my first time I lost money, which was tough. Um, and then from there, I went into Airbnb arbitrage, uh, learned that, got out of that right before COVID. And then at the tail end of COVID, I got into long-term rentals, got then I started building my portfolio. So I had a long-term rental in Tallahassee, Florida. Then I got some, again, more mentorship, teach me how to invest out of state. And I picked Minnesota. And the reason why I picked Minnesota was because at the time, Minnesota had growing economy, low unemployment, had about 1 million people between Minneapolis and St. Paul. So it was checking all the boxes. And plus, it was the only, excuse me, area in all 50 states that had more than 3 weeks of inventory, which was another one of my boxes. So I invested in two single family homes there and then one duplex. So I got my feet wet in multifamily. And then uh, again, my next expensive webinar, I realized what it is to have a horrible contractor who, long story short, cost me money and had to liquidate those properties in order to kind of take care of the people that I borrowed money from and at least try to break even, if not, um, how could I put this? Not hemorrhage as bad as I could have if I didn't sell it when I did. So um, earlier part of this year, I liquidated my whole portfolio and now just kind of focusing on um, investing locally. So I have a little bit more control, not to deal with pain in the butt project managers or trying to find a handyman to change a doorknob. So I think that's kind of a good summary of who I am and what I've done.
That's a lot. That's a lot. Yes. First of all, thank you for serving our great
Appreciate
country
it.
and Air Force. Man, it's through great, amazing people like you that just give and serve and they sacrifice in such an amazing way that makes our country great. So I really
Appreciate the work. Appreciate it.
appreciate that a lot. So you mentioned that you're doing some military contracting work. For those people that may be watching this and they have a job, but they're really interested in getting into real estate investing. You've done a lot of different things, some that are local and a lot of things that are out of state. And then you've invested in different kinds of properties too.
Yeah.
What's something that like what would you give in terms of advice to someone new that wants to get into real estate and they have a day job and so their time is limited? Uh,
Yeah. So for me, having a military background, everything is time blocked, right? So from this time, you're doing PT. From this time, you have meetings. From this time, you're doing your job. From this time, you go home. So everything was like a very structured type of day. So I did, like I said, I retired in 2019, and so for 3 of those years, I was investing and being in the military. So anyone who knows the military is you don't get to dictate your time. They dictate time to you. Where you're going to be and when you're going to be there. So what I had to do was one, like I mentioned, I'm married with 4 kids, so I had to make sure I balanced work, my ambitions to be a real estate investor, and my my home life. Right. So I had young kids at the time. All two of them were involved in sports. So trying to, and then also involved in like the school plays and stuff like that. So trying to um, find time to do everything was a little difficult. Um, I was fortunate enough that I went into work early because I was the boss. Got into work early, and got off early to give me a little bit of room between when I was obligated to be at my kids' events and the time that I get home. So I spent like an hour or two doing some research. I worked with a local agent so that I can push out my offers for my wholesales.
Mhm.
And then that's how I kind of started off. And then more recently, again, you have to make a decision what's important to you. So I go in early to work so I can get off at a good time, and I spend about 5 or 6 hours a day working my business. I got inspired because I hear people that even work night shift and stuff like that, and they were taking their 30-minute to an hour lunch and jumping on the phone and making calls to agents, and 11 o'clock at night they're doing research, and I'm like,
Yep.
that's some dedication. I'm not dedicated like that. I wish I was. But it just goes to show you that if you find the time, you know, that's the other thing too. I found myself that I had time to, play Xbox or, watch YouTube or, scroll Facebook, but I never really had time to invest in doing, you know, what I call money making activities. And once I realized that um, I was doing stuff that wasn't really helping me achieve my goal, I started replacing those activities with things that were. So, I was spending 2 hours on Xbox. Those 2 hours now are being spent in my home office, um, searching the MLS for potential properties or finding out where the next meetup was or RIA so that I can start developing relationships. Um, so that's how I kind of morphed into going from not having time to do this to blocking my time and making time for this because I knew that if I didn't, I would never reach my goals, and it was important to me to reach my goals, so I made it a priority.
And you're willing to sacrifice, clearly.
Yeah, you have to. Again, kind of the things I did in the military, right? You miss birthdays, you miss holidays. So unfortunately, my family's kind of used to me having to miss important days and times. Fortunately, since I've retired, I've made sure that that hasn't happened again, and that I'm here for my family. I'll move stuff around so that I'm there for those important events. Um, and then if I have to miss it, I find a way to mitigate it. Meaning we celebrate earlier, we celebrate later, but we still celebrate whatever that um, particular event is. Um, so that it doesn't go uncelebrated, I guess is the best way of putting it.
Love it. So you're willing to sacrifice up front. And then sometimes we have to sacrifice along the way, but you still so it sounds like sacrificing to you does not necessarily mean that um, we just miss the family event or the get together or whatever, but it does mean that we are intentionally making time, and sometimes that means that we're going to move the family event a little bit, right?
Right.
But we're going to in as many times as we can be proactive in that process. Then we can all plan together, and we have a common goal. Do you talk to your family about here's what our goal is, here's what we're doing along the way? I'm sacrificing now so that.
Um, I've had the conversation with my wife, obviously, with my kids, semi. I've actually tried to pull um, three of my kids into learning about real estate, so I can kind of put them to work and then help them, or I should say, we'll grow the business together, and then we can earn money together. But the fortunate or unfortunate thing is you can't make somebody do what somebody they don't want to do. If they don't have a mindset of being an entrepreneur, then you can't make them an entrepreneur. And I can say that about myself. When I was in my 20s, owning my own business was not even a, a distant goal of mine. I was enjoying my life, meeting new people, enjoying music, dancing, and all that kind of stuff. Owning a business wasn't even, like I said, in my vision for myself in the near or far future. So I don't blame them. Like they'll eventually see what I'm doing, and they'll like, okay, Dad's finally got something going on here. This is something I want to be a part of, and when they're ready, they'll ask to be a part of it. So um, I truly believe that. Um, but as far as the asking for sacrifice, yeah, I mean they understand. Like I said, like they're used to me being gone for like deployments and stuff. So if I'm spending a week at a boot camp, or like we just spent a few days up in Boston, they understand why I'm there. I'm not with the family, um, and they know that no matter where I'm at, that I got their back and I'm supporting them. They know they can call me at any time, and I'm gonna pick up the phone. So we have that kind of relationship. So, so even though I'm not, walking in the front door every day, it's not like we are not aware of what each other is doing.
That's awesome. it's a great example of how to prioritize and still achieve what we're trying to achieve. Um, just because we prioritize and say that we're doing something for our family doesn't mean that um, it's 100% one way or 100% the other way. There's always that middle ground and the ups and the downs and the pros and the cons, and it's a give and take, right?
Exactly.
And it's prioritizing individual activities and events like based upon the impact uh,
Agreed.
along the way. So you mentioned your goals. What are your goals?
So, thanks to our um, partner in our title company, right? Pace Morby has kind of tasked us and to create our Mount Everest, basically our ultimate goal. And when I first started picking like what my goal is or my mission for my business, I think I was thinking too small, and he helped kind of open my mind up to bigger, better things. I mentioned that I'm a father of four, and those relationships that I have with my kids, I get to see other young adults and some of the struggles that they go through in life. And one of the bigger problems a lot of young adults are experiencing right now is just affordability of living. You know, when you and I were 18, 19, we couldn't hurry up and get out of mom and dad's house, and we wanted to be on our own 2 feet and live by our own rules. And a lot of kids still kind of want to do that, but unfortunately, our economy doesn't allow them to do that. I mean, I was, I had a 1 bedroom, 1 bath apartment, and I was paying like three and a quarter. That's unheard of right now, right? Even for if you're renting a room from somebody, they're trying to charge you like $800, $900. So um, my quote unquote Mount Everest is, or my goal or my mission for my business as it stands today, is I'm trying to help 1,000 people per month who are struggling to pay bills and find affordable housing by purchasing 143 single family homes utilizing the co-living strategy while netting 223K per month. That is my goal. So that way I can replace my monthly income at my W-2 job, and I can focus on acquiring more properties and helping more people. Because although I say, you know, people that are struggling with bills and stuff, there's so many demographics out there that need help. For example, me being a veteran, homeless vets, I'd love to help homeless vets. You have domestic violence victims, um, children that are aging out of foster care. Um, you have young professionals, right? You have pilots and stewardess that have crash pads that could afford, affordable housing. So there's so many different demographics out there that could benefit from me being able to acquire properties at a hopefully good rate, and at a good purchase price that I can afford to, or be allowed to offer a rent that is affordable for all.
Jose, that's incredible, man.
Thanks.
So you're talking about co-living.
I-
Um, Tell us a little bit more about what co-living is and how that works.
So co-living has been around forever. Co-living is just kind of like the new label that has been put on this way of living, for lack of a better term. Some people call it co-op. You most what's the word I'm looking for? I would say the entity that uses the most are colleges or universities, right? Where if you do housing at school, you usually have um, multiple people in one kind of like pod. Each everybody has a room and they have common areas like the kitchen and the living area. And that's basically what co-living is. In my case, what I'm doing is I'm purchasing a single family home and kind of utilizing a multifamily idea where each room is its own unit, right? Um, So it'd be rent by the room type of idea, strategy where you have a kitchen, common area, and a dining area for everybody to use. And the hope is that everybody inside the house kind of formed to become a community, kind of lean like almost like a family where they lean on each other. They need like, hey, I locked my keys in my car. Can you help me get to work? And I'll deal with the keys later. Or um, which we'll call it. Hey, you don't look like you're doing well. Let me run you to the hospital real quick. You know what I mean? So everybody's looking out for each other. That's the goal behind co-living. And then, which brings me up to another demographic. You have the what some people call the golden age or goldie oldies, people that are got their facilities amongst them. They just don't want to live alone, and they don't have no need to have a nurse or a doctor with them, so they don't need to be in a no nursing home, or they don't really need anybody to help them, so they don't need to be in a residential assisted living, right? All they just want is some company, somebody to kind of live life with, not necessarily have somebody do for them. So that's another reason why you'd have co-living is, or I like co-living is because I don't know about you, but we looked at putting my grandmother in an assisted living facility, and it's like 8-10 grand a month, and that insurance only covers so much. And after a while, if you have money saved up, I mean that those savings go by really, really quick. So you end up putting them in there for a few months, and then you end up having them live with you because that's the only way you can afford, and it just puts a stress on a lot of people. Um, so that's what co-living is to me. Trying to help people just find affordable housing. I think it's going to be a huge need here in the next. Well, it's a huge need now, but I think it'll be a greater need here in the next 5-10 years.
Absolutely. I could not agree more. All the data I've seen says housing prices will continue to climb. There's
Yep.
nothing that suggests that will stop. And people's wages are growing very slowly, but the cost of living is increasing significantly. Um, I saw some stats this week that says the average American uh, has gone. I forget if it was in the last 5 or 10 years. It's not very long. It has gone from 60% to 72% of their total living expenses of their total income.
Yeah.
Now that includes utilities. It includes like everything that goes into housing.
Right.
How is that sustainable? Like, how can people continue to afford to live in a nice place and be close to work and maintain a any kind of balance in life, right?
Right. And it's hard too because let's just say, for example, you're lucky enough to afford a house. Um, you know, there's some pros and cons to everything. And like for example, in my area, the houses are appreciating so much that the city has decided they want a piece of the pie. So they've reevaluated reevaluated everybody's home. And of course, everybody's house appraised a couple hundred K more than they really are. And now our property taxes have gone up, and we're paying property taxes on a property value that our houses are not made of. They literally picked the most expensive house in the neighborhood and basically put everybody's taxes kind of tied to that number. And even when I disputed their value of my home with a full blown paid appraisal, um, they're like, we agree with you. And then instead of reducing what they thought my house was worth to what their appraisal said, they only brought it down 30K. So I benefit. I don't pay 200K more than what my house is worth, but when you're paying property taxes, every little thing counts. And you you pair that with the cost of water going up, the cost of electricity going up. Um, it adds up, and over a few years, there are people in my neighborhood that are selling their houses because they just can't afford it. It's getting to the point where if they stay, they'll end up being in foreclosure. So that's why a lot of people rent because then they don't have to worry about that. But even rent still goes up, but I don't think rent's going up as fast as homeowners' mortgage payments are. So Yeah, that's crazy.
Isn't that crazy? Yeah. And obviously a mortgage is locked in for 30 years, but at the point that you refinance it or if you move, then we now get a new mortgage payment. And so
Right.
I think that's what you're saying is at the point where we refinance or if we move, now that mortgage payment jumps based upon the new value of the house and the loan that
Yeah, well, not only that, but I escrow my property taxes.
Mhm.
So my mortgage is tied to my property taxes. So every time my property taxes go up, so does my mortgage. And if the taxes go up and I don't have enough in escrow, well, then now I have to pay back the um, the amount that I didn't have saved. Plus, I have to make the new payment to make sure that the next time they pay my escrow or my taxes that I have enough in there. So now I'm almost getting double hit, right? I got to pay back what I was short, and then I also got to pay up for the future. So you get double whammied, and it can get, like I said, it can get very expensive. I remember one time my mortgage payment went up 300 or 400 bucks in a month, and luckily I'm in a position or I have a job where I can absorb that kind of increase. But if you think about people who um, just qualified for their mortgage, right? Let's say their DTI was or their debt to income ratio was 50%, and then a year later they reevaluate their taxes, and now all of a sudden you went from what was like a $2,000 mortgage payment, now you're at 2,500. It's crazy. You know, you and I know a fellow investor who has a property in, I believe it's in Miami, Florida. Their insurance went up 200%. So, where they were making, I think it was um, $9,000 a month on insurance. Now they're paying $2,000 a month just in insurance. So if like I said, if you're just as an investor, if you only have $300 or $400 a month in cash flow and you just went up $1,000, now you're short, right? So now you're losing money on an investment property, which is nobody ever wants to do. So like I said, things are tough out there. You gotta really buy, and then that's why I say I want to buy where I can make it make sense and help people, because if it continues in the way it's going, a lot of people are not going to be able to afford to live.
Right. Okay, so there's a lot of people feeling that pain, exactly what we're talking about, and the way that you're describing it. What do they do? What's the solution? How do we get out of that cycle? And
Well, I mean, for me, I would want you to rent rent my properties, right? Find one of my co-living, or like David's here. Get into one of our co-living properties. Yeah, you won't have home ownership, but at least you'll have a safe place to live, a roof over your head, uh, hopefully community that you can leverage and lean on in tough times. And I know my goal is to keep rents as low as possible. As long as I'm making money, there's no point in having to raise rents. And but again, as cost of maintaining the property goes up, obviously rents have to go up so I can um, unfortunately pass the those extra costs on to whoever's in my place. But outside of that, I mean, the only other thing to do is uh, find some fixer uppers and live in them and fix them up is the only inexpensive way that I know these days to get into a house. Other than that, you have your foreclosures you could potentially purchase, but that is not as easy as going to a bank and saying, "Hey, I want to buy this foreclosure." Right? You got to know somebody that has money in their pocket, and you got to buy it outright at the auction if you can't come to an agreement before it goes to auction. So they're really, I hate to say it, but there's really not a good way to buy these days an affordable house. Um, at least not the conventional way anyway. You and I are fortunate enough to um, been educated on a strategy is called subject to the existing mortgage, where um, you can negotiate with a seller and not assume their mortgage, but take over their payments, take ownership of the property, right? Um, that would be probably the only way I know of today that would be ideal for anybody, right? Because you can take advantage of some of the lower interest rates that people were refinancing into about 4 years ago, having a low monthly payment. So let's say you and I did that. We bought a house subject to, and we're lucky. This person had like a 2.75 interest rate, their mortgage and principal, interest, taxes, and insurance um, payment was like 1,900 bucks, right? Well, then if you have a 5 bedroom house, you could potentially do 700 per room. That's 3,500 bucks. You're covering the mortgage. You have still enough money in there to pay for utilities and some money to um, cash flow to make it worth your while. So um, that would be the only way that I can think of where people could probably afford it. But if you don't know the strategy, you don't know how to properly structure it, you could really mess yourself up. So um, if anybody's considering doing it, I would say get in the sub two community, even in the free community that we have, and partner or leverage other people's knowledge, partner with them, and they're always trying to sell those type of properties. There's a strategy called wrap, where if I get a property like that and you have a need for a better payment, or maybe you just can't qualify through the bank, I can give you a loan to pay for the loan that I have at a maybe a little higher interest rate and a more of a mortgage payment, so that I know everything's being covered. So those are the two ways, I guess, as I talk to you and things just keep popping in my head, how you can um, find affordable housing, I guess, outside of co-living.
Sure. Earlier, you were talking about the working on a team, and you got your own company, but also the potential of joining a team of people,
Absolutely.
because real estate's complex, right? There's a ton of moving pieces. One of the people that I guess when I first started in real estate 5 years ago, I hired, like, I went through a training course and ended up paying about $25,000 total, but ended up getting a coach and a mentor and went to all these weekend classes. And I was asking my coach, hey, how do we? I think that specific question was about insurance and how much insurance do I put on my first property? Because I need to know, I got to get insurance because I'm closing on it tomorrow
Right.
or next week or whatever. And he said, David, just go talk to the insurance person. I said, oh, they're biased. Like, I hired you as my coach. Like, tell me exactly how much I need to get. He said, David, think about a real estate transaction. There are so many moving pieces. Imagine a brick wall. Every single brick is a different detail that's part of an overall real estate transaction, especially if you're buying it low. And then you have to do a large remodel and you have to refinance it and then you're going to rent it, right? If you're doing the Burr method. Now, I mean, there's so many moving pieces. And so
Right.
getting onto a team, partnering with someone that's established, that's gone through a lot of the learning and they've made the mistakes,
Right.
and then they can help us avoid a lot of those same mistakes. What do you think about that strategy? And is that something that you recommend, especially for newer people that are trying to get into real estate and they're so excited, like they hear the great things and the benefits, but they're just struggling to execute their first one?
Yeah, I would say definitely find a team or at least partner with one person that's a little bit more experienced. I thought I was doing that when I first got here to Colorado. I paid for a mentorship, but in my mind, it was paying to be a partner with this local investor. And my idea of what I was paying for and what he thought I was paying for was two different things. You know, that's a story for another day. But yeah, I mean, I mentioned earlier where, when I first started wholesaling, I really did not know what I was doing, right? I had some poor leader mentorship who didn't tell me the proper way, in, I don't say illegal way, but maybe it wasn't the most ethical way of doing wholesaling, right? And I didn't know at the time. I didn't know. You don't know what you don't know. Now that I know, looking back, I'm like, how could they have taught me that way? Because that's not ethical. But I thought that was the way it was done. So hey, if they're doing it, it must be legal because that's how everybody's doing it, right?
Mhm.
But now being a part of this community, Sub Two Owners Club, I know about transaction coordinators. I wish I would have known about transaction coordinators back then because I would have just said, "Here's my two contracts," right? They would have made sure that the title company had everything in order, make sure that the HUD was reading right, and then I would have gladly paid them, a $200 to $800 fee to make sure that I got my 10 grand. You know, um, that didn't happen in one situation. I wasn't on the HUD. They closed the deal, and I never got my. I got paid half my assignment fee up front, and then the other half was supposed to be at closing, which I never got. And I had to go back to that investor. It's like, you never paid me my second half. And like, well, title company should have done that. I said, well, title company should have, but they didn't. He owed me my money, and he was reluctant to do it because they already closed. So I had no leverage on him whatsoever. He did end up sending me a check for the balance, but then he was a dead buyer. He didn't want to work with me anymore. So that was like my last wholesale deal because it just wasn't going well. So if I had a partner who was active in wholesaling and could show me the ropes, awesome, great. Uh, Transaction coordinator to make sure my paperwork is doing great, being done the proper way, being documented for the title company so that I'm doing it legally, ethically, and making sure that all parties involved knows what's going on so there's no surprises. Um, that was the other thing back then is you were trying to hide the fact you're trying to wholesale. I'm like, why? I mean, I don't have nothing to hide, right? But in some cases, depending on what kind of assignment fee you're getting, there are wholesalers that were making more money than the seller was, and they were getting upset. So that's why these days wholesalers got a bad name. Plus, a lot of states are passing laws to out or make wholesaling illegal. So yeah, and then one of the things that I'm acquiring into my business is lending. So to help other people kind of get into their first deal or their fifth deal, whichever deal it may be, right? Helping them with earnest money deposits, and if they are wholesaling, um, offering double closes or what is also known as transactional funding, so that they can close your deal without any hassles from either side and do it legally without um, causing anybody any heartache. So,
Sounds amazing. You sound like a great person to partner with. So
I
yeah,
would
and
like to think so.
yeah, Jose, I appreciate you coming onto the podcast and sharing your story. For those people that would like to partner with you, can you share how would someone get in contact with you, and what would that partnership potentially look like?
So, depending on what the transaction we're doing, whether it's a purchase of a home, flipping a home, or if it's just on the lending side, um, that partnership will look different, right? Depending on the person's experience too, depending what they're bringing to the table, the percentage of what we earn together would be different. I would think if somebody's brand new, learning the ropes, and I'm bringing majority of the resources, for example, the contracts, the the end buyer. So you're literally just found the deal. Maybe I do, instead of a 50-50, maybe it's like a 60-40 or 70-30 type of split. Um, but again, it's subjective to whoever that other person I'm partnering with is. If people were trying to get a hold of me, I am for Instagram at Jose Purpose Over Profit. And same thing on YouTube is at Jose Purpose Over Profit. If you're looking to borrow money, I have a website you can go to. It's jose.ifundwise.com, or my website is www.joselensmoney.com. And Facebook is just Jose Cortes. You can see this ugly mug is as the profile picture. And just hit me up on Facebook. Either add me as a friend or send me a message. I feel like I'm a pretty approachable guy, and yeah, I love to do business. I love to partner with people, and I love sharing my knowledge with people. So please reach out.
Yeah, I love getting to know you, and the thing I love so much is we operate like this. We don't
Exactly.
hold our information tight. And Jose, you love to just help and share the knowledge, the experience, and help other people be more successful and
Absolutely.
reduce the times when we make a mistake. And you like to learn from your mistakes, right? And so
Hopefully.
you and I are just are like, we want to make a different mistake today and tomorrow than we made yesterday.
Exactly.
And if we share our mistakes, it's not a sign of weakness. It is actually a sign of strength, because we're going to help other people so that we all get better together and we level each
Agree.
other. Well,
Absolutely.
Jose, this is great. Anything else you'd like to share with us today?
Just thank you so much for allowing me to be on your podcast and being your first guest. To everybody out there, like I said, no matter when you watch this, if it's a couple days from the day you post it to 2 or 3 years, most of that information I just shared with you won't change. I don't foresee it changing. And I'd love to work with you, share my knowledge. And if you see me out and about at a meetup or on stage as a speaker, hopefully one day, just come up and say hi. I'd love to meet you and see how you're doing, and if I happen to um, help you or influence you or help you in any way, I'd love for you to share that with me so I know that what I'm doing is making a difference in the world. So, other than that, I hope everybody has a great day and God bless.
Jose, this was great. Thank you for being the guest. My name again is David Ross. You can find me on social medias like YouTube and Instagram at The Real Deal David Ross. And phone number is 828-308-8727. We'd love to connect with you. And we're going to have more amazing speakers and people that come and share and help make each other better. So thanks everyone for joining, and we'll catch you again on the next one soon.
Bye, everybody.